So when it comes to self-development, I always try to go one level deeper in the sense that the things you think you want are probably not what you really want, right? Where you tend to pursue things like career success and status and money and so on. We think those are the things we want, but what we really want are things like belonging, respect from our peers, freedom from suffering, and so on. So how did I arrive at this way of thinking? Because it basically makes a shortcut, right? Most people pursue stuff that is really out of reach, really hard to get, only to find that once you have the money and the car and whatnot, it still doesn't make you happy. And so then you're still at square one, and now you have to start pursuing the thing you really wanted. My own approach and what I teach is the shortcut of getting straight to the thing you actually want. Now, how did I come up with this, or how did I develop this way of thinking? This is basically evidence-based thinking, because the reason we pursue all the wrong stuff is emotional. This, I think, is especially true now in the digital age, in the attention economy. The things that the external influences that make you want certain things and pursue certain things are all engagement optimized. You're seeing not the things that are the most true or the most useful or the most educational. You're seeing the things that keep you the most hooked on whatever platform you're currently on. And so, of course, you're always seeing imagery of highly attention-grabbing things. You're seeing attractive, super fit people with expensive things like living their best life. You're seeing some kind of a exaggerated, hyper-real version of like the couple goals, dream relationship, and so on. And also the stuff we consume is always highly visual. So you'll always see more of the things that are easy to show on camera, and you won't see the things that are not easy to show on camera, such as emotions. So this is why it makes perfect sense that we have a distorted view of these things. We have a distorted view of what it means to succeed. We have a distorted view of what we actually want to pursue. This is essentially why the things we think we want are not what we really want. And all this is to say that this is why emotionally, spontaneously, you go, oh, I want these things. I want to look like this fitness influencer. I want to have money like this how to make money guru. I want to have the couple goals relationship. I want to live in a space that looks like this and so on, right? That's the emotional thing. And you associate that with, oh, all of these people must be happy and free of suffering and so on. And the way around that is just a more evidence-based approach. There is, luckily, a lot of evidence about this, about what actually leads to long-term happiness, what actually gives people satisfaction and so on. But you have to let the data convince you. And this is something I've been interested in for a long time. And from a relatively young age, I started learning about this. I started learning essentially about the difference between what we think will make us happy and what actually makes us happy. The field of positive psychology is one that I've been fascinated with for a long time. And that is, there's a lot of that in there, right? It's basically the study of what actually gives people happiness and life satisfaction. And so we have a lot of good evidence and a lot of good data on this. It's a habit, right? It's a habit of mind. I've developed this habit of thinking about things. But also for me, that's just a more normal part of my worldview. It comes more automatically to me because I don't use social media for the most part, right? I'm not consuming all this stuff I was talking about just before. Or if I am consuming it, then it's at a very, very low grade. For every TikTok reel I've ever watched, I've probably read like 24 books. So the sources of information that I give myself skew my worldview towards this more evidence-based way of thinking and away from the emotional and misleading way of thinking.
That sounds very intimidating. Now it's like, oh shit. Now I gotta read like 24 books on each topic and somebody start developing this way of thinking.
I don't know if there's an easy answer to like how do you develop this or how do you become interested in this, because it's like raw data, right? Just the data on things is never going to be as engaging as these engagement optimized sources. So I think this is one of the reasons why it's probably important to not feed your brain too much of this like junk information, junk entertainment, right? You can get really accustomed to essentially the junk food, sugar food version of information, which is these like super fast things, super engagement optimized stuff on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and so on. If that's what you're accustomed to, the idea of, oh, I'm gonna read a research paper and try to interpret this data might be very unappealing. And maybe you can do both. I'm sure there are people who do both, but I think you have to get accustomed to that as like a pleasurable thing to do. Is like I'm actually learning some real stuff instead of just getting stimulated. And in fact, we've talked about this in other contexts, right? What basically happens is that all of this instant stimulation you're getting, all of these dopamine hits you're getting, they're highly engaging, they're highly habit forming and addictive, but it leads to a lower emotional state in general. And that's true for all addictions basically. So whether it is eating sugary foods or taking some drug or watching TikToks, you're getting like this instant gratification, instant pleasure, but overall in the longer term, it's making you feel worse. We have to free ourselves from this cycle, and we have to realize that the opposite is true, that if you pursue something and it takes effort and it's difficult at first, then you're doing some suffering in the pursuit of, let's say, deeper knowledge, right? Instead of just swiping through TikToks, you're like reading a book that gives you some science-based evidence, that gives you some real and deeper information about how things work in the world. The book is never going to be as engaging and as instantly gratifying as the TikToks. And in a way, you're suffering while you're reading. It's like you're trying to understand these concepts that are new to you, but it has the opposite effect, that the suffering in pursuit of something leads to long-term satisfaction and gratification. And you can watch our Dopamine Nation video to learn more about how that works and why that works. But I guess the short answer is, like, you have to teach yourself and you have to learn that this is what you really want. Actually, this is super meta now that I'm thinking about it, right? Because if you're constantly consuming this instant gratification type of content, you're doing that because that's what you think you want. You think you want this pleasure. What you really want is not an instant spike of pleasure. What you really want is longer term satisfaction. And longer term satisfaction comes from doing hard things to reach a goal, doing hard things to reach a goal, and so on and so forth. I think we have to learn that that's true. We have to learn that this leads to long-term satisfaction, which makes it easier to then be motivated to do to watch long-form content, to read books, and so on. And one of the easiest ways to train yourself to do that is on a physical level. So exercise does that, right? You work out hard, which is a form of suffering, and then you feel better. Sauna and ice bath does that, right? It's too hot, I can't stand it. It's too cold, I want to get out. But then I feel better for the rest of the day. So on a physical level, you can demonstrate to yourself that this is true, and you can start looking for this pattern and recognizing this pattern in other parts of your life. And I think this is why I am generally more motivated to read a book, and I would prefer to read a challenging book rather than an overly dumbed down book. Because I've essentially learned this and internalized this, I know that this is what increases my life satisfaction and life quality over time. Okay, so now that you know this, what do you do about it? How do you use this new information to your advantage? Well, if you want to learn more about how exactly dopamine works and how to build brain healthy habits, and you want to know it from a neuroscientist, check out this conversation with TJ Power. And if you want to get better at, in general, taking action from things you learn, but you tend to struggle with that, take the challenge that's laid out in this video.